Good morning. Welcome to the Assessment and Accountability webinar for April. My name is Kevin Whitman, and I'm the Superintendent's Director for Assessment and Accountability. We have a few housekeeping notes we always want to start with. Everyone joining today is muted, so if you have any questions during the presentation, you can send those to the team through the questions pane. Simply type in your question and click send. If you need any technical assistance, please send us a chat. We do have team members monitoring that, and we'll do our best to help. We have also posted this presentation as a document, so you can download and follow along. And as always, we're recording this presentation, so it'll be posted on our website along with the transcript. All right, let's get started. So I have a few quick announcements I wanted to start with. First, the survey window is now closed, so thank you all for participating. I know it's a busy year, so we really appreciate all your work. The student survey results are going to be available in the eProof system in the coming weeks. Summary reports are going to be available on April 26th, and disaggregated reports will be available by May 25th. For the parent and staff survey results, those are available now, and to access them, you'd click on the 3 dots next to the survey and generate a new report. If you're interested in the comments that the parents or staff members entered in the free response section, you would download the CSV files. The comments are included in those files, but they're not in the reports that you can directly access. We also wanted to alert everyone to some potential funding for learning loss. So these funds are coronavirus relief funds that have been allocated through the governor's Coronavirus Financial Advisory Committee. And so this is not yet finalized, but we do anticipate that it'll be passed. So we wanted to give as much a heads up as possible. It's $20 million in total, and there are separate components for K-4 and K-12 learning loss. And the distribution formula for both of those components uses different metrics. So the K-4 funds are going to be based on the number of students performing below grade level on the April IRI. And so to support that, we're asking districts to assess students by April 23rd. So we understand this timeline is difficult though, so if you're not able to assess students, let us know, and we can go back to the IRI results from January onward. And please know that this doesn't affect the normal May IRI administration. So districts are still going to have to assess students during that window. The April IRI data I'm talking about here are just for applications related to the K-4 and K-12 learning loss. For the K-12 money, the percentage of students not reading at grade level on that April IRI is going to be used, and that's going to be used along with the percentage of students in grades 6 through 12 identified as at risk in the March IC data. So this is just a little bit of a heads up here. There is a webinar scheduled later today for superintendents, charter administrators, and business managers, and that's going to provide more detail about this funding and application process. And with that, I'll turn it over to Paul to talk about NAEP.
Good morning. This is Paul Kleinert. I'm your National Assessment of Educational Progress Coordinator. The National Assessment Governing Board postponed NAEP 1 year due to COVID's impact on education nationally. I am already beginning tasks for setting up the normal NAEP test for the spring of next year. NAEP 2021 becomes NAEP 2022. There will be a new sample of schools, and this will be a full sample, not the limited sample that was selected this year. The state NAEP, the one that affects Idaho more than the national NAEP years, will resume in 2022 and continue on even-numbered years. National NAEP, which affects far fewer schools in Idaho, sometimes even 0 schools in our state, will be odd-numbered years. I sent out emails on the afternoon of April 8th to LEAs and schools selected for NAEP. This is the same selection as everything else this year, so if you were selected for NAEP 2021 or the NAEP monthly survey, this is the same sample for the school and teacher questionnaire. The goal of this study is to gather information from schools and teachers about student learning opportunities. This information, just like the monthly survey, can provide very important context about education in Idaho. This is a one-time survey. The March NAEP monthly survey got really close to the mark needed to provide information about attendance in Idaho. We had enough participation in February to report, so I know Idaho can get to that number again. More than anything, I believe timing of the last window was to blame, as the window was about 80% spring break. The National Center for Education Statistics also noted that responses were lower in March nationally, and then decided to expand all future windows. The windows for the monthly survey will now be April 14th to 27th, May 19th to June 2nd, and June 16th to the 29th. This should also help with attrition. Results came from the February monthly survey. Institute for Educational Sciences School Survey website hosts these data. The link is in the slide. This website is publicly available, and you can see every bit of data available, just like the normal NAEP results. So I have a comparison here between national and state instruction for the January window. So go ahead, go to the website, check it out. And as always, are there any questions?
Paul, we do have a question. Many of the staff completing the NAEP survey, it's after contract days. How will those people complete the June survey?
Kelly, thanks for asking. I'm going to raise your question to the higher authorities, and I'm going to get back to you as soon as I know, and I will send out an announcement to the rest of the LEAs when I have that information. But that is very important to me. Thank you.
And that's it. Thanks.
All right. Good morning, Idaho. I hope your students and your loved ones are well, and of course you. Okay, the pre-reporting data validation window is now open until April 19th, 2021. So it is imperative that districts use the pre-reporting data validation window to identify, modify, and correct any possible errors in student demographic, accommodation, and/or other information prior to the state's analysis. An example of correction that districts may perform are misspelling of names, a correction of EDU ID number, or the combination of a duplicate student record. For more details on how to perform these tasks, district task coordinators should review the WIDA AMS user guide supplement and/or watch the post-testing data validation webinar found in the WIDA secure portal under the download library section. Right. If a student was unable to test or complete access due to COVID-19, district test coordinators should track these reasons or scenarios within WIDA AMS during this pre-reporting data validation window, which is now open. The procedure to do this is outlined in the Tracking COVID-19 Access Non-Participants Procedures document. The procedures document can be found on the English Language Proficiency Assessment webpage. The tracking protocol will allow the department to better measure the impact of COVID-19 on state assessment administration. Okay, the WIDA kindergarten screener was released on March 30th, 2021. The Idaho SDE intends to use the new WIDA kindergarten screener starting on August 1st, 2021. The new WIDA screener for kindergarten will replace the kindergarten WAPT and will be used to identify provisional Ls enrolling in kindergarten and grade 1 first semester. The screen-out criteria is now being finalized and will be posted to the ELPA webpage and communicated in various upcoming webinars, and will be embedded into the appropriate guidance documents that focus on L identification and placement. Trainings around the WIDA screener for kindergarten are now available through the WIDA secure portal. However, before district personnel can start training and certification process, district test coordinators will need to assign the WIDA screener for kindergarten permission set to those individuals via the WIDA secure portal. There will be multiple training opportunities to become acquainted with and on how to administer the new WIDA screener for kindergarten assessment in the spring and summer. The first of these trainings was held on April 8th, and the second webinar will happen on April 22nd. So please mark your calendars. The training links can be found on the ELPA webpage under the trainings tab. And please join us on May 18th from 11 o'clock to 12:30 Mountain Standard Time for the WIDA Screener for Kindergarten Screen Out Criteria Review Meeting. So during this meeting, participants will learn about the process the SDE went through in defining that screen out criteria for the new WIDA Screener for Kindergarten. The criteria will outline thresholds that first and second semester kindergarten and first semester grade 1 provisional Ls will need to attain to screen out of LIEP services. And participants will also be given the opportunity to ask questions or provide additional input before the criteria is solidified. So please join us for that review. The Idaho SDE and WIDA webinars are posted on the ELPA webpage under the Trainings tab. Below is information on the upcoming webinars through May 13th, 2021. And specific WebEx or Zoom webinar links are embedded into those titles, and they can be found on the ELPA webpage under that Trainings tab, under the webinar heading. So please join us for those. And like always, at this time, I would like to open myself up to any questions that you may have related to the ELPA assessment.
Okay, Andrew, we do have a question. Will the new WIDA kindergartner screener training, if completed before July 1st, roll over to the 21-22 school year? Should staff wait until after July 1st to complete the WIDA new kindergartner screener certifications?
That is an excellent question, and one that I get quite often. That certification will not roll over. So if you take the training quizzes now and become certified this year, you will need to do it again after July 1st, because next year is a recertification year for the screener, and it will be a new certification year because it is a new screener. But you can go through the training and just not do the quizzes until after July 1st, or you can take them and take those quizzes again. It's really a local decision. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, and that was it for now.
I'm going to send it right on over to Karen Striegel.
All right, greetings from the alternate universe. I have 2 alternate assessment topics to share today. First, I want to remind you that the information you and your staff need to administer the Idaho alternate assessment is contained in the 2020-2021 online summative test administration manual. Remember, this is the one TAM to rule them all. It contains general information that applies to both the ISAT and the Idaho assessments, ISAT specific information and appendices, and Idaho alternate assessment specific information and appendices. Every person involved in administering the Idaho alternate assessment should read and be familiar with information contained in the TAM. The Idaho alternate assessment training videos posted on the Special Education and Alternate Assessment webpage under the Training tab are supplemental to the TAM. In other words, watching the training videos alone is not sufficient training to prepare staff to administer the Idaho alternate assessment. The training videos do not include test administration processes or procedures for the Idaho alternate assessment that are the same as for ISATs. For example, managing test sessions in the TA site and logging students into the secure test browser are not addressed in the training videos. However, I understand that folks will have questions even after reading the one TAM to rule them all and watching the Idaho alternate assessment training videos. So, as promised in the training videos, I am holding 2 virtual question and answer sessions, one this week and one next week. These are open-ended sessions during which staff involved in administering the test may ask any questions they have after reading the TAM and watching the training videos. I will not be presenting any content. I'll be answering questions from the field. The Zoom meeting links and information were included in the last edition of the Assessment and Accountability newsletter and are on this slide. Please spread the word. I look forward to seeing you all online. Thank you for listening and breathing. As always, please do not hesitate to contact me if you have any questions.
We don't have any alt questions at the moment, Karen. Thank you.
All right, on to Kevin Chandler.
Hi everyone, Kevin Chandler here at the department. A few updates for science. So to start, I just want to reiterate the forms that we have this year for this year's science ISAT. First up is the in-person online independent field test, or IFT. That will be administered online to students in grades 5, 8, and 11 who test in person. Then there's the remote online fixed form. For those students taking a science ISAT remotely, they will take it online as a fixed form. For science ISAT, there will be no paper pencil and no Spanish translation, again, because we are administering an IFT. For Spring 21 summatives, teachers can be test administrators, proctors, for both in-person and remote administration of the summatives to their own students. This optional Flexibility has been put in place only for Spring 21 summative administration. DCs and SCs must report such assignments via the test incident log prior to the administration. The test incident log is available through the link in this presentation, and details are added to the assessment integrity guide for how to report such assignments. Again, this reporting is done to protect teachers in case of any large variabilities in scores. Keep in mind also that those teachers must take and pass the TA certification course. They are administering in-person and/or remote TA certification course. Both of those certification courses are up on the ISAT portal now. Speaking of the TA app, it has been updated with a new session dashboard. As you can see here, when you open the TA app, you will see the new session dashboard with two tabs in the upper left corner, the Active Sessions tab and the Upcoming Sessions tab. The Active Sessions tab includes the Start a New Session Now button. TAs will click that in order to immediately start a test session. To be clear, starting a test session immediately can be done for either in-person or remote administration. However, SDE strongly encourages its use only for in-person administration. By clicking on the Upcoming Sessions tab, you will see the Schedule a Session button. That will allow TAs to schedule test sessions in advance. This can be done for either in-person or remote administration. SDE strongly encourages use for scheduling remote test sessions. Test sessions can be scheduled no more than 45 days in advance and for a period of no more than 14 days. Remember, both the in-person and remote testing windows close on May 28th. Okay, so remember the Spring 21 in-person online IFT is required for students in 5, 8, and 11, and the grade 11 science ISAT has replaced the biology and chemistry EOCs. There's no makeup testing from last year, and because this is an independent field test, there will be no individual student reports or reported scores from this year's science ISATs. Keep in mind that it is the SDE's expectations that most students will test in person and their remote administration will be conducted for extenuating circumstances. So we've gone over how the TA can immediately start or schedule a test session, but I do want to point out where the in-person and remote tests are located in the test tree. As you can see here, the in-person online IFTs are in the ISAT Summative Science branch. From there, a TA can pick the grades 5, 8, and or 11 science ISAT they would like to include in the test session. Also recall that for in-person administration, a student can only use the Idaho Secure Browser in order to take the ISAT Summative Science Summative. So we've gone over in-person administration, so let's go over remote administration on Science ISAT. The remote testing window opened on Monday, April 12th. Again, students in grades 5 and 11 who are in districts that have received approval to administer the ISAT summatives remotely will take these online fixed forms. As I stated before, the expectation is that most students will test in person, and therefore these remote online fixed forms will only be used in situations where the district is approved to administer summatives remotely. For the remote online fixed forms, they are on their own branch of the TA test tree. As you can see here, the remote fixed forms are on the remote ISAT Summative Science branch. From there, a TA can pick the grade 5, 8, and or 11 science fixed form they would like to include in the test session. To reiterate, our expectation is that most students will test in person and their remote administration will be conducted for extenuating circumstances. But if remote administration is right for your district and SDE has approved your district to test remotely, students will still have to use the Idaho Secure Browser to access the remote ISAT Summative Science test. Also, do not forget about the administering test column of tasks in TIDE. You can, of course, print testing tickets used during administration and submit test improprieties and monitor test progress. See the TIDE Test Improprieties PowerPoint on the ISAT portal for descriptions on how to prevent, detect, and escalate test incidents and how the TIDE Test Improprieties platform can be used to request appeals for test improprieties. That PowerPoint presentation can be used to train all test administration on test incidents and TIDE test improprieties. Monitoring test progress is also an important task, especially considering additional personnel are serving as test administrators and students are taking tests either in person or remotely. Check in often to generate reports to track session statuses, verify participation, and see test completion rates. And before you put the question in the chat box, yes, I do monitor statewide test completion rates. Here's the data for in-person Spring 21 Science ISATs. The data was pulled on 4/12, and I did have to generate this graph in Excel from the state completion test reports generated in Tide. Good job, grade 11, you're currently in the lead. To wrap up, if all goes according to plan, SDE will administer an operational field test in Spring 22 in grades 5, 8, and 11. Then after our Summer 22 standard setting, SDE will provide individual student reports and scale scores. With those updates, are there any questions about the Science ISAT?
We have a few, Chandler. From Jody Barnes, we had a proctor try to give a remote science test for high school. She was not able to select it and begin the session. She called the help desk and they told her remote science is not available. How can we get the session going?
Yep, so a couple things to double check there. Make sure she has taken and passed the remote TA certification course. And then also make sure that the students were using the Idaho Secure browser in order to access the test. So in order to administer the test, the test administrator has to have passed the remote TA certification course, and students must be using the Idaho Secure browser in order to access the tests. Double check those, and if those also have been checked off, follow up with me and we can dig into this a little bit further.
Thank you. The next one. Will the remote testing choices not work or open for staff that have not completed the remote training? No chance of inadvertent test selections?
Yeah, so what's going to happen there is that if a test administrator that has not passed the remote TA certification course attempts to start that remote test session, they will not be allowed by the system to do that.
And that's the last science question for right now.
Excellent. So I'll throw it over to myself for the updates on the ISATs. So as we plan for all school year, administration of the ELA and mathematics ISATs in grades 3 through 8 and 10 is required. There's no makeup testing from last school year. SDE's expectation is that most students will test in person, but we have allowed remote administration of summative assessments that will only occur in extenuating circumstances. With in-person and remote administration available in Spring 21, let's go over the test windows for each type of administration. In-person test window open on Monday, March 15, and will close on Friday, May 28. The remote administration test window is also open. That opened on Monday, April 12, and will also close on Friday, May 28. Additionally, the ELA and mathematics summatives will be adjusted forms. These adjusted forms will be administered in all grades and to all students testing, either in person or remotely. As I said, the adjusted forms will be administered to students taking the summatives either in person or remotely. Adjusted form blueprints have been created for grades 3 through 8 in high school. Access them on the ISAT portal. With that said, let's go over the student performance data that will be available from the completion of these adjusted forms. No matter if the student is administered their summative in person or remotely, she will have the available individual student report or ISR. Those ISRs will be available to districts and schools to distribute to parents and students. That ISR will have an overall scale score and proficiency level. However, claim level performance data will only be available at the aggregate, meaning claim level performance data will be in our reporting system and will be available for rosters of students. As we went over in the Science ISAT section, for Spring 21 summatives, teachers can be test administrators for both in-person and remote administration of the summatives to their own students. This optional flexibility has been put in place only for Spring 21 summative administration. ECs and SCs must report such assignments via the test incident log prior to administration. Again, this reporting is done to protect teachers in case of any large variability in the scores. Keep in mind also that those teachers must take and pass the TA certification course if they're administering in-person and or remote TA certification courses. Both of those certification courses are up on the ISAT portal now. Certified test administrators will access the test administration app using up-to-date conventional web browser on the ISAT portal to immediately start or schedule a test session. Scheduled test session will produce the test session number that will need to be included in the test incident log that documents a teacher administering a test to their own students. Just a little bit more on the TA app. On March 15, the TA app was updated to include the in-person summative ISATs, as well as the ability to schedule test sessions. On April 12, The TA app was updated again to include the remote summative fixed forms. To reiterate, TAs will access the test administration app on the ISAT portal using a conventional browser, such as Google Chrome or Mozilla Firefox. The TA app will be the application TAs use to administer the Spring 21 summits, either in person or remote. The TA app again was updated on March 15 to add the in-person summatives and the ability to schedule test sessions. The TA app was updated on April 12 to add the remote summatives and to include enhancements that will allow TAs to communicate with students taking their summatives remotely. Therefore, applications like Zoom, Microsoft Teams, and Google Meet will not be necessary for remote administration of the summatives. As I went over the science section, you open the TA app, you will see the new session dashboard, and the session dashboard will have those two tabs. The active session tabs includes the start a new session button, where the TA can immediately start a test session. Again, this can be done for either in-person or remote administration. However, we strongly encourage this only is used for in-person administration. Clicking on the upcoming sessions tab, you see the schedule a session button. Again, that allows TAs to schedule a test session in advance. This can be done for either in-person or remote, but again, we strongly encourage this use for scheduling remote test sessions. As I said before, test sessions can be scheduled no more than 45 days in advance and for a period of no more than 14 days. Just like for science, both the in-person and remote testing windows close on May 28th. Okay, so as we did with science, let's go over the in-person ELA and math test trees. In the picture, you can see the in-person ELA and math ISATs are on separate branches. Clicking on the ISAT Summative Math branch brings you to the next level in the hierarchy. As you can see here, the ISAT Math CAT and the ISAT Math PT are on separate branches. This allows for the in-person CAT and PT to be taken in different test sessions. Now, let's contrast that setup with the remote ELA and Math ISAT fixed forms. The remote ISAT, ELA, and Math summatives are on their own branches. When you click on the remote ISAT Summative Math, you are taken to the available fixed forms. This level of hierarchy is expected. Our testing vendor smushed together the CAT and PT portion into a fixed form. Additional details and models of these fixed forms is located in the FAQ. Again, SDE's expectation is that most students will test in person, but we've allowed remote administration of summative assessments will occur in extenuating circumstances. Going over this model again for ELA and Math, as you can see, when students test in person, the students will have to use the Idaho Secure Browser to access the ELA and Math summatives. If remote administration is right for your district, SDE has approved your district to test remotely, students should use the Idaho Secure Browser to access the remote ISAT Summative ELA and Math tests. The Idaho Secure Browser provides all necessary test security protections. As a last resort, the student can use an up-to-date conventional web browser, for example, Chrome or Firefox, on a school-owned or personal device to access the remote ISAT summatives. Please note that Microsoft Internet Explorer and Microsoft Edge are unsupported browsers and it cannot be used to access the tests. A few more important resources that I want to point out for the summative testing. First is the Spring 21 Online Summative Test Administration Manual. The TAM has been published on the ISAT portal. This year's TAM covers relevant information for both in-person and remote administration. The Test Administrator TA Quick Guide is also available on the ISAT portal. Access the TA Quick Guide for a succinct manual. It covers relevant information on how TAs log into the TA app, how to schedule a test session, how students log in, and the layout of tools and context menus in the test delivery system. Other resources relevant to summative testing on the ISAT portal. Those resources are organized by subjects, ELA, Math, Science, and IDAA. Included in the ELA and Math folders are the blueprints for the adjusted forms and a chart that summarizes scale score ranges and proficiency levels. Speaking again of remote administration, SDE has published several resources in addition to the TAM to support remote administration. Cambium Assessment has created a special remote administration folder on the ISAT portal. Inside the remote administration folder is a surfeit of resources. I will not go over each one at this time, but please remember that the FAQ is a living document and has been updated several times since its first publication. The latest FAQ is version 11 and was posted yesterday. If you have an earlier version of the FAQ, the SDE strongly encourages you to access the updated version. Speaking of the FAQ, I want to go over an important update to it. Under the accessibility and accommodations topic, I've added that there's an addition in TIDE that allows for the setting of accommodations for the remote ELA fixed form. In TIDE, the column 8 remote ELA has been added so that accommodations for the remote ELA fixed form can be set. For students that are taking the remote ELA fixed form and need embedded or non-embedded accommodations, document those in column 8 remote ELA. If you do not see the 8 remote ELA column, click on the blue arrow to scroll to the right. The upload template has also been updated to include 8 remote ELA in the subject column. The accommodations for the remote and in-person math and science ISATs are still set in the 3 math, CAT and PT, and 4 science columns respectively. As I mentioned in the science section, it is important to note the TIDE test and proprieties appeals available to DDAs and DCs, and again, monitor test progress for the ELAs and math ISATs. And yes, I am monitoring statewide completion rates for ELA and math as well. Here's the data for in-person spring 21 ELA and math ISATs. The data was pulled on 4/12, and I generated this graph in Excel from the state test completion reports generated in TIDE. Good job, grade 10. You're currently in the lead. Okay, just a few more resources I wanted to draw your attention to. First, the practice and training tests. Those practice and training tests in ELA, math, and science are still available and will be available through the summative testing window. From the ISAT portal homepage, click on the practice and training test panel. On the practice and training test page, click on the Take the Sample/Training Test panel. Using a supported web browser, such as Chrome or Firefox, anyone, students, parents, grandparents, teachers, administrators, etc., can log in and take a practice test or practice or training test. You can see the guest user and guest session buttons are toggled on, allowing anyone to log in and practice taking a test. The other important feature that I want to draw your attention to on this page is the Run Diagnostics link. Clicking on the Run Diagnostics link will take you to this page. This is the platform users can access to test internet speed for taking or administering a summative assessment. Lastly, keep in mind the important dates and secure browsers panels on the ISAT portal. There are a few dates to keep in mind for this year's summative testing windows. Those dates will be documented on the important dates page. And then there's the secure browsers panel. Click there for information for how to install the IDEO secure browser on the machine students will use to access the summative tests. And with that, are there any ISAT questions?
We do have quite a few, Chandler. To start, is the remote administration training this Friday covering different information than the one conducted earlier in the testing window?
Yes, like I mentioned earlier, there have been several updates to the FAQ, so we want to make sure we go over that. And then also, if there's any questions that the field has after conducting practice and training test rounds with the remote administration teachers, we want to make sure that those questions are posed to us so that we can answer those.
Thank you. When will the official results be available to share with parents?
So I'm assuming that is the individual student reports. So just to give you kind of a heads up on how that works. So both the CAT and PT portions of the test need to be completed about 10 days after the completion of that last segment. Scores flow into reporting. From there, individual student reports can be generated, and then the individual student reports can then be shared securely with the parents.
Thank you. And we had a few comments too that were not questions as far as I can tell. Dave Harrison says, the new option of picking in-person or remote hybrid does not show up unless the proctor is certified to administer both. Our test proctors who have only taken the general TA certification course do not get the bubble options when creating test sessions.
Wonderful, excellent. Thanks, Dave. Yeah, I took both the in-person TA certification course and remote certification course. So for me, both buttons showed up. But yeah, thanks. I'm glad that added security features there.
Perfect. And then Michael Nelson, we provided the first remote assessments this week. And although we had a few kinks to work out, we were fortunate that this is an option for our students. So thank you.
Excellent.
And then some more questions. What does the error tests with potential issues mean? What should we do if we get that error? Students are unable to proceed or submit work and it's deleted upon logging out.
I'm not really familiar with that particular error. Definitely report that to the Idaho Help Desk so that they can generate a help desk log, a help desk case number for us so that we can follow up with our testing vendor on that.
Thank you. Are the fixed forms and regular in-person the exact same for data comparisons?
So there is some of the same items that occur on the in-person forms that are available on the remote forms. With that said, the in-person forms are being generated from a pool of items. The fixed forms, though, are just that, a fixed form of items. So yes, those do have the same type of items, and in some cases, some items on each one of the types of forms.
Thank you. Can remote tests be stopped between the PT and CAT portions?
Yes, it certainly can. The same pausing rules and expiration rules apply to the segments of the remote fixed forms. All of that is explained in further detail in the FAQ.
Thank you. If I set up a test session in advance, can I use the same test link multiple times? So a TA could test multiple sections throughout the day or week with the same link?
So a couple of things with that. For your test session, when you're scheduling it, you do have to pick a date range. That date range does kind of put parameters around when that session will be active. From there, though, you're also picking the tests that go into that test section. So if you have picked, for instance, a grade 5 science test and a grade 8 science test to go in that session, then yes, students can use that same session in order to take their tests.
Thank you. COVID-related absence / non-participation rules, where and when will these be available?
Yes, so we'll have some more information that will be placed in our participation appeals guide this year related to coding COVID-based non-participation. So that should be up within the next couple of weeks. So for right now, we're just asking you to test as many students as you can and try to keep track if there are any situations where it's a COVID-related issue. And then later on, you can report that to us in the appeals application.
Thank you. April 30th is the last date students need to be enrolled in our district to be required to take the ISATs, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. How do I turn off universal tools for the students? According to the UOG, there is a way to do this as an embedded designated support.
That's an excellent question. I'm not specifically recalling the solution to that. Karen, would you have any insight into that?
That is a good question. It might happen in Tide, but I'm no Tide expert. And then you've also got that screen when students log on, right? I'm no secure test browser expert either, where you there are some that you can turn off there. It's the first, I'm picturing the page, there's a section that's got tools and you can turn things on and off there. You know what I'm talking about, Chandler?
I do, yes. When the TA starts the session and the student is approved into that session, they can click on the little I feature in order to open up the accommodations there to see if they can turn those off. Yeah, I'll have to definitely follow up on that one and post the answer to that in the Q&A.
Thank you. If one TA creates a scheduled remote test session, can another TA see it and administer it if both have remote certification?
They cannot. So that person that creates it will then have that test session available to them to start and administer for the students.
Thank you. And then Dave Harrison was managed to help you guys out on this one. Turning off universal tools is done by the test proctor when approving the student's entry into the test session. And he says, yes, the I.
Oh, all right, excellent. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate the assist on that one.
And the original asker of that question, Brooke, says, I do not see an option in TIDE, page 7 of the UOG, in the designated support box. And then she did an asterisk. The UOG shows that this is possible on page 7. So that was the last question I had for ISAT at this time.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone, for your questions. So now I'll throw it over to Taylor with some IRI updates.
Good morning, everybody. I will be covering the IRI update today. A few reminders for April. There is a training for the new comparison and at-risk report available through Edmodo. If you're interested in that training, the access code to the course is right there on the slide. There are 2 enhancements coming to iStation in the fall that we have mentioned in past webinars. First is iStation application movement to the web through WebAssembly or WASM, intended to improve iStation's overall capabilities and to allow Chromebook users to access iStation through a URL. Second is PowerPath, which will be the new user experience with a new look for all iStation users. I've been working with iStation for training resources for both of these new features that will roll out closer to the fall testing window. Note that neither of those transitions will happen prior to the May testing window. Nothing will change from normal administration of the May benchmark. And speaking of that window, we're almost there. The IRI testing window opens on May 3rd and goes through May 28th. All K3 students need to be assessed, and I would recommend reviewing the updated test administration manual prior to the testing window to ensure you're familiar with anything that you need to be. And finally, we have gotten a few questions in the last few weeks about IRI testing for students with significant cognitive disabilities. Our guidance is to administer the current IRI using iStation to students for whom it is appropriate and with their allowable accommodations, including turning off the timer. However, if you have a student who cannot take the current IRI, you can administer an alternative literacy assessment that makes sense for your student. You can use a formal assessment like Core Phonics or something informal that you create. You do not need to upload any scores or send anything to the SDE, and you should use the information from whatever literacy assessment you use to inform the student's IEP goals. The official work on that IRI for students with significant cognitive disabilities can be found on the Special Education and Alternate Assessment webpage under FAQs tab if you'd like to see it in its entirety. Are there any IRI questions? And I'm the one monitoring the IRI questions. I don't see any. So, Ayaka, you're up.
Good morning. Thank you, everyone, for participating in the SAP school day yesterday. I hope all went well. I have some closing activities to share today. This information has already gone out to the SAP coordinators, but please make sure to return test materials to the College Board today for scoring. Late returns will create scoring and invoicing challenges. In addition, the makeup survey is due tomorrow. Please make sure to submit the survey even if you do not have anyone taking the makeup, so we know you are not participating, like a RSVP for a birthday party. We'd like to know if you are not making it so we don't have to prepare for extra cupcakes or, in this case, makeup material. For voucher schools, your students can use vouchers through April 27th to register for the May National. And because Kelly asked earlier about score release, I wanted to add that primary admin scores will be released to students on May 5th. Any questions?
I don't have one for college entrance exams, but there is a follow-up to the universal tools question we were having before for ISAT. Can you answer my question again about turning off the universal tools so I can make note of it to pass along to proctors, please?
Yes, in the Q&A that goes along with this, I'll put in detailed directions for how to access that and turn it off.
Thank you. And that is all I have for right now.
Okay, thank you everyone for joining us. Our next webinar is scheduled at 10 a.m. on May 12th. You can find links to that to register and review our past webinars at our resource center. Then we have a URL here in the slide where you can register as well. We'll open the floor for any final questions and stay on the line for a couple more minutes in case anything comes to mind. But thank you again.
Brooke did follow up and asked when they'll get the Q&A. I will try to have that up and out as soon as possible. Our turnaround time to have the webinar recorded and edited and transcribed is within 10 days, but I will work super hard and super fast to get that up a little bit sooner, and we can get your information down to send you an email as well. And I'm not seeing any more questions, Whitman.
Okay, with that, we'll close out this webinar. Thank you all again for attending. And if you have any other questions that arise, always feel free to contact us directly at any time. And we'll talk to you all soon.